We are back. Sorry, guys. If you're just joining us, we've had to restart. There's an initial part because of internet glitches. We had was so buffering, so it was the recommendation of that we have the live restarted. So we've had to make the hard decision or the difficulty of restarting the broadcast. I hope this time around the situation will be better, but I see no improvement to image quality. That's the discouraging part or early signs. That's a discouraging early sign. Unfortunately, it's not looking good already. Let's hope for the best. We are hoping for the best on this one. But it looks like it's the same story. The image quality in terms of the camera is still buffering. I don't know if there's anything that I can do to improve it. Trust me, it has nothing to do with the camera. Very little to do with the cleanness of the camera. It's just the image buffering on the other end at the point of receiving it. Otherwise, on test here, it looks okay. It looks okay. We are back, but real dandy. Yes, we are back, but it doesn't look like the image quality has improved much. It doesn't look like it has improved much. That's the unfortunate bit. We had hoped for better, but you know, when it comes to technology, these things are bound to bite you in the either ways. So basically, we're paying the sins for for that. We're paying the sins for that. And okay, let me have our audios tested on this end and see if things will be better. Okay, for those of you that are just joining us, welcome to the Football Tribe UG channel. My name is Robert Kesakos, and what you're seeing is a restarted version of our weekend preview. That's why it says part 2. We had started a broadcast. Internet decided to mess us up, and as unfortunate as that sounds, we've had to restart the broadcast. Rio Danny says Liverpool have no plans of sacking Slot. Yes, that's according to the officials from within the Liverpool ranks. They say they have no plans of sacking Arne Slot, regardless of how the season has panned out. First of all, it's not been a very, very encouraging season for Liverpool. It's been one that I don't think Liverpool fans will have mixed reactions about it. They'll simply conclude that it's not been good enough or it's been poor, to say the least. First of all, them being reigning champions over the Premier League, when you look at how many games they've lost, when you look at their exit from certain cup competitions, when you exit, let's say, the EFL Cup at the hands of what was it? Was it against Crystal Palace? Yeah, who beat them by 3-1. So, and then you exit the FA Cup in the manner in which they did, literally being embarrassed by, Man City. Hi, Chizzy, how are you doing? Good to have you the broadcast. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it is your first time here. For those of you that are just joining us, please like the broadcast. And then their exit from the UEFA Champions League against PSG, I do not think their performances over both legs were that poor, apart from the first leg. Their first leg performance wasn't good enough. In fact, it was poor, in my opinion. In the second leg, it was good, but not good enough to win them the game or even have them score a single goal. So I think they want to give Arne Slot the benefit of doubt. They want to give him more time because they appreciate the idea that it takes time to build a good team. Nonetheless, when you look at their overall performances across the season that have been quite very, very turbulent, I do not stand very encouraged. Oh, looks like our image quality has improved. We are better now. Okay. I do not think they'll be very, very encouraged. Oh, wish a good life, bro. Life happy, live happy. Thank you so much. Is it Fazila or FZ? Hi, FZ. Where are you joining us from? Good to have you on the broadcast. So, when you look at Liverpool's overall, apologies on the internet glitch. Please expect more of this to happen during the course of this broadcast. Part of why we ended the first broadcast was because of internet glitches. I remember I spent about 5 minutes with an internet glitch. Internet drops and then you can't continue. It's very, very nagging. It's very, very nagging. I'm trying to keep my composure, not to go off like a loose cannon. But anyways, I'm hoping for the best. Let's pray to God that we see this one throughout without any glitch whatsoever. But like I was saying, it wasn't it's not very, very encouraging for Liverpool fans looking at their team and the kinds of performances they've been having to go into next season. First, and then you also have these sorts of senior players that are going to be leaving the club. In Andy Robertson, in Mohamed Salah, we've spoken about Virgil van Dijk, who also is in sort of the evening days of his Liverpool career with 1 year left to his current contract. It means they're going to have to rebuild their backline. We know for a fact that Juventus are interested in signing Alisson Ramsey-Becker. It's not a given that he will leave, but nonetheless, it will be another former Jurgen Klopp soldier exiting the club if that were to be the case. So Arne Slot is trying to build this team into his mold. But when you look at the amount of money they spent in the summer to bring in Florian Wirtz, Hugo Ekitike, to bring in Alexander Isak, Jeremy Frimpong, Milos Kerkez, Giovanni Leoni, Mamadashvili. I mean, okay, Mamadashvili had already been signed, but basically he's a new arrival. You've not been really, really encouraged because those additions were meant to make Liverpool compete much better than they did last season. And unfortunately, it's been the total opposite. So, Rio Dundee, I do not know how Liverpool will span out next season, but it is true that they are not considering to sack Arne Slot at this stage in their season. So I think we're done with our preview for the Nottingham Sunderland game. That was in part 1, so I'm not going to repeat these things. But my prediction for that was for Nottingham Forest to nick it by 2-1. So allow me to move on to the other fixtures. Fulham against Aston Villa on Saturday in the early kickoff. That's at 2:30 p.m. Fulham, just sold Brentford to a goalless draw. They can be a stubborn side, Fulham. We've seen them beat up against some opponents, but although form recently has not been on their side, they've had 2 goalless draws in the last 5. They've won only 1, beating up against Burnley 3-1, and they've lost the other 2, losing to West Ham and Liverpool by 2-0 and 1-0 against West Ham. Then when you look at Aston Villa, besides losing to Chelsea by 4-1, that was on match day 29, and then they lost subsequently to Manchester United by 3-1. They've since bounced back well, beat up against West Ham by 2-0, shared the spoils in a 1-1 draw against Nottingham Forest, and also beat up against Sunderland by 4-3 last weekend. Now that was as snazzy as it gets. First of all, they are pushing for a top 5 finish in as far as the Premier League table is concerned for Aston Villa, and they are level on points with a third place Manchester United on 58 points. Really, they sit in 4th place. Then they have the semi-finals of the UEFA Europa League. I think for Aston Villa, their situation is not much different from that of Nottingham Forest, only that the two sides find themselves at the opposite sides of the table. Aston Villa in the top 4, looking to cement that, to lock in that place of top 4 because they want to qualify for Champions League next season. But the beauty of it for Aston Villa is that they have 2 windows of opportunity to qualify for the UEFA Champions League. The first window is by finishing within the top 5, for which they are already in the top 4 as we speak. And they're in a bit of a healthy position, even though they are only 3 points ahead of Liverpool. So it doesn't look like they are about to drop out of the top 5. Then the other is by winning the UEFA Europa League. I think that's I think that arguably could be the most fruitful route that they can take in as far as qualifying for the UEFA Champions League. It could be the harder one because you need to beat teams. First of all, you need to knock out Nottingham Forest to qualify for the finals of the UEFA Europa League and then win it for you to earn that Champions League status by winning the UEFA Europa League. I think they have a very, very capable team of winning it. Two, they have a very, very capable manager that is very, very successful in that competition. I don't know if he's lost any UEFA Europa League finals other than the one of 2019 when he was in charge of Arsenal that lost 4-1 to Chelsea. But I think they are all banking on that experience for him to guide them to a piece of silverware. British, on the other side, Fulham are one of the party spoilers. Fulham do not have much to fight for, yes, other than an improved Premier League table finish. And as we speak currently, they are 12th on the Premier League globe with 45 points. Marco Silva, his contract runs out at the end of the season and is yet to renew. There's been lots and lots of questions in regards to whether he is going to renew or he will be leaving the Cottagers. We do not know. Early indicators, in as far as the realms of Chelsea have indicated, are that he's under consideration, as well as Andoni Iraola, as potential permanent managerial appointments for Chelsea, who just the other day part ways with Liam Rasinia and replaced him by Carl McFarlane as the interim until the end of the season. So, however, first of all, for Chelsea, I wouldn't wish Marco Silva for them. I do not think he's good enough. He's good. But for the team, the caliber of Chelsea, I think, not for me. Andoni Iraola is still a rookie, in my opinion, that is yet to prove himself at the highest levels. He's yet to win anything. So he's not a winner. But in terms of building a team and team organization, he's looking good. I think he would be no less a bet to take on than Liam Rasinia was, basically, than Graham Potter was. So it would be another bet that Chelsea take on a person like Andoni Iraola. I think he's capable, but more importantly, he will need time. He will need time to get that team to play the way he would have hoped. So whether it's him that they end up with or somebody else, that remains to be seen. But in as far as earlier broadcast was concerned, Rio Dandy was suggesting that, or was of the view that Chelsea need Thomas Tuchel back. I, for one, I do not necessarily think that they need Thomas Tuchel back, even though he's a good manager. If he did return, it would be a good thing. But when you say need, it's as if to suggest that he is their only savior. Unless you intend to mean that there's not so many good out there that are as good as him that they can trust to take on the realms of Chelsea, then I would understand that school of argument. Then also, on the other side, you have a Julian Nagelsmann, who Chelsea were interested in before appointing Mauricio Pochettino in 2023, currently with the German national team. So now, for teams that are out in the search for managers in the market, a couple of things that are going to complicate their situation is the World Cup. So if you would wish to interview any of the candidate potential managers or head coaches as for the vacant roles, and by this I'm talking about teams like Real Madrid, I'm talking about teams like Chelsea, I'm talking about teams like Man United, then you ought to wait for those guys to get done with the World Cup. Having seen the precedent that was set by Real Madrid when they appointed Julian Lopetegui in 2018 prior to the World Cup, and Spain decided to part ways with him before the World Cup, and no wonder they didn't do that good. You're thinking there's not many managers that are going to commit that blunder. Julian Nagelsmann is well trusted by the German national team or German federation, so even if he were to exit and return to club football, I do not think he's going to do it pre the World Cup. Maybe he can agree to a deal in principle quietly behind closed doors and then proceed with the German national team. If you're interested in Carlo Ancelotti, he's with the Brazil national team. I don't think he's going to drop that to join club football. He would want the test and experience of the World Cup being in charge. Same applies for Thomas Tuchel. Same applies for Luis de la Fuente with the Spanish national team. Same applies for Didier Deschamps, who is having his last dance with the French national team as they wait to appoint Zinedine Zidane as his replacement. He's just a guy in waiting in the frames. So I speak about all those names because they have been linked with big clubs. Man United, their legends have discussed Carlo Ancelotti, they've discussed Andoni Iraola, they've discussed Julian Nagelsmann. Same applies for Real Madrid. There's been discussions about Didier Deschamps. Meanwhile, some reports have suggested that Real Madrid could go for, could have a revisit of a stint of Jose Mourinho. And a lot of people have said, and I, for one, I sort of buy into their school of argument that Jose Mourinho is past his glory days. Not that he cannot win anymore, but you're not going to get the version of Jose Mourinho between 2003 to 2017, thereabout. You're not going to get that sort of version of Mourinho, maybe. That's the school of thought. I still believe he's very, very capable, but maybe his hunger is no longer as much. His vigor, that energy, is no longer as much, but he's still a very, very capable guy. So, in my humble opinion. So anyways, that's all to go through this. And then Unai Emery. So I do not know. There seems to be a lack of appreciation, perhaps rooted in experience, but also in doubt that Unai Emery is capable of taking on a big club. He's managed Paris Saint-Germain quite fairly successfully so, although he never won them the Champions League, despite beating Barcelona 4-0 in the first leg and then losing the reverse fixture. Then he's been at Arsenal, where he thought he wasn't afforded ample time to build whatever it was he was building and the sort of cohort of players that he was dealing with. Now, my question is, hi Adash, why does a team like Chelsea take a bet on a rookie manager like Liam Senior than they can take a bet on Unai Emery? Hi Milton. And for me, forget the timing of the appointment of Liam Senior. 9 times out of 10, if you put the two on the weighing scale, I'm going to go with Unai Emery. That's a given. Now, I think clubs like Chelsea, and there's a lot others there, maybe even Man United inclusive, in a way, have, I think ever since 2008, 2008, 2007, around period, 2008, ever since that period, every team, and fast forward, maybe 2019 or 2020, every team seems to be looking for their own Pep Guardiola. Every team seems to be looking for their own version of a Mikel Arteta, maybe a better version of a Mikel Arteta. Every team seems to be looking for that their own Julian Nagelsmann. In other words, a rookie coach who comes and blows the world out of proportion, who comes and surprises the world with how good they are as a coach or as a manager. Today we speak glowingly about Cesc Fabregas because of the things he's been able to do with Como. Not because he's won anything, but because he's shown huge signs of potential. Look at Mikel Arteta. 6 years he's been in charge of that Arsenal side. And the great signs of improvement are there for the world to see. Never mind that he's not won anything yet, besides the FA Cup in his debut half season. You look at what Pep Guardiola did in winning the Spanish La Liga in 2008, 2009, 2010, and actually in 2009, 10, and 11, 3 consecutive La Liga titles. He was a rookie. He came from La Masia. He was coaching the, B-side. Thoughts on Chelsea sacking Leroy Senior after only 106 days. So that's what we're discussing exactly. So when Pep Guardiola did that, And it was a tremendous success for Barcelona, winning 2 UEFA Champions League titles in 2009 and in 2011, on both occasions beating Manchester United, missing out on the finals of the 2010, losing to Jose Mourinho's Inter Milan. And then fast forward, you look at Mikel Arteta and what's been able to do with Arsenal. Not that he's won anything, guys, but in terms of how they've handled respective projects as rookies, because at the time in 2008, Pep Guardiola was a rookie. At the time in 2019, Mikel Arteta was a rookie. He's just learning his ropes, and he's still learning. So there seems to be this feeling that teams are going for lesser experienced managers, hoping to create their own heroes or kings. And Jose Mourinho spoke about this, that a manager or head coach with less experience is more likely to get the job today than somebody of experience. And it's quite an intriguing topic, by the way. The question is why? The question is why? Like I said, everybody is looking to make their own king. It takes me back to the conversation I had sometime when it came to, ever since Barcelona signed Neymar Santos Jr. from from Santos, every team has tried their luck to find their next Neymar. Ever since Monaco signed Kylian Mbappe, every team has tried to find their Kylian Mbappe. Some have been successful, others not, but largely unsuccessful. So for Liam Rasinia to get sacked, by the way, like I said yesterday, it felt inevitable. Results did not stand his way. Now, I said this and I'll repeat it. The sacking of Liam Rasinia felt justified. I thought Liam Rasinia was the wrong appointment at the wrong time. Why? Because apologies for the internet glitch. I need to fight with my ISP now because it's getting out of hand. I need to fast fight with my ISP. So, all right, back to the conversation. Apologies with that. I needed to put out to express my displeasure with my ISP because I can't have this thing of internet dropping every 5 minutes, and I'm apologizing to my audience just because my ISP is proving to be incompetent. But yeah, like I said, for Liam Rasinia, only 1 victory in 9 games, 8 losses. I mean, it was just going to be inevitable. But for me, the thing I want Chelsea to acknowledge, one, that for them to build a sustainable and winning project, they must be willing to accord a manager time. Unfortunately, if you're going to be a good head coach, a good manager at the top level, you need 2 things. You need combined building capacity while winning at the same time. Not winning in the sense of pieces of silverware, but in terms of winning games to show signs of progress in whatever it is that you're building. So the lifespan they give you, or the patience that you get at a big team, that time has shrinks. You go back to Sir Alex Ferguson in 1986, and he was given as many as 5-6 years to build whatever he built to to make Man United what he made them in that era or for the next 20 odd years or so. You go back to, you look at Mikel Arteta, really he's not won anything. I do not think there's anyone with a single ounce of doubt that thinks or that is going to tell you that he's not been given time. You know, they have been given time. So you must be able to combine the two. You go back to Andoni Iraola with AFC Bournemouth. Of course, FC Bournemouth's ambitions are quite very small or otherwise, but he was given the time to build whatever it is that he built. Now, you go back to Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. He was given the ample time to build whatever he built. You go back to the Man City project. They gave themselves the time to build and trust that, one, we must have stability with the manager. Just imagine you have a child and every week you're changing their teacher. Okay, let's say every term of school, you're changing the teacher. Trust me, the progress of that child is going to be derailed. Why? Every tutor comes with their own style. You know, they may be teaching the same thing, but their ways of doing it is going to be different. So that lack of consistency for a manager, a head coach in the realms of Chelsea is going to cost them in the long run. It's bound to cost them. You know? So it's true that outstanding managers who produce results are given time, but reverse is true. Exactly. Now, again, when Man United lost the Premier League title to Arsenal in 2004, and then Jose Mourinho came to Chelsea and won it for the two subsequent seasons, 2005 and 2006. Do you guys remember what Sir Alex Ferguson did in that period of 3 years? He went back to the drawing board and built himself a squad that competed for the next 7 odd years, you know, or even more. Actually, I think more than 7, because he then dominated the Premier League between 2007, 8, and 9. He only missed the league title in 2010 to Chelsea, a very, very outstanding Chelsea under Carlo Ancelotti, and he won it back in 2011. He then missed it in 2012 to Man City on goal difference, and won it in 2013 by adding Robin van Persie, because he had built a good team over time, a good project for which he went on transitioning bit by bit, you know, with the subtraction of certain players who left the club, the Carlos Tevez, etc., Cristiano Ronaldo, but with good replacements as well. In that period, he won a Champions League title in 2008 and played 2 other finals of the Champions League. He didn't win them because he was against the best side there was in Europe at the time, Barcelona, in 2009 and 2011. But building that squad, that project, you take it back to those 3 years after, because they had been champions in 2003 at the expense of Arsenal. So they missed 2004. And he's like, no, I need to do something different. So in the next 2 years, 2005 and 2006, he builds that squad that goes on to win. So Chelsea must be thinking in a more or less the same sort of direction. That, because I do not like it when clubs play to the gallery. Every time fans come up in arms, they make a decision to say, let's part ways with this manager and bring in a new one. When a club's going to stand on their legs and say, we made the right decision, we're going to stick by this guy, even when results are bad at the moment. Why? Because we know the bigger picture. That's what leadership is about. You are trusted to think for the bigger group and make decisions and make judgments. So I feel sometimes with some of these big clubs, as soon as results start to go bad and fans are up in arms, they are quick to make a decision. Again, really, Mikel Arteta has not won anything major. Allow me to use this example. When he walks through the doors at Arsenal, when he was interviewed for that job, he must have sold those guys a dream. He must have sold them a project, a plan. And it's because they bought into that plan. That's why they've been patient with him. Otherwise, they would have sacked him in his first full season. You remember that COVID season, 2020, 2021? They still finished 8th on the Premier League table. Tell me how better that was if they had finished 8th in the previous season and yet Emery's debut campaign, they had finished 5th. You know? But he sold them something that they believed in. They had the conviction that one, they had made the right decision and that they are willing to back it, or at least take a bet on it, that it will work out in the long run. You know, follow all the press around Arsenal and Mikel Arteta. In nowhere within the first 4 full years of his project has it been written that they're demanding Mikel Arteta of piece of silverware. Nowhere. Why? Because he must have sold them a plan. So the question is, what plans do these head coaches sell to Chelsea, or what does Chelsea require of these guys? You know, because there must be something. Anyways, let me retreat to some of those comments. Manchester City are having a dream run. Thank you, Adash. That's true. I mean, they're having a party of the lifetime. You say, indeed, Rafinha was brought in by Chelsea with very little experience. Exactly. Wrong person at the wrong time. You see, sometimes people underestimate the significance or the weight of some of these clubs. It's not easy for a rookie manager to come from a smaller team and go to a big team and succeed. What you oftentimes have is a rookie who has been in the ranks of a big team to come and succeed. Pep Guardiola had played for Barcelona. He was within the Barcelona system. Mikel Arteta was at Manchester City, a Man City side that was winning. So I remember when he came in, he said, I know what it takes to win. He has not yet won. But the one thing you cannot doubt, that he knows what it takes to win. In other words, he knows the requirements or the cost of winning. So there's that. Frank Lampard, he had only been to Derby County when he came in at Chelsea. Did it work out? No. He didn't. He didn't. You know? Look at Mauricio Sarri. He had been to Lazio, to Napoli. When he came to Chelsea, it still didn't work out anyway. Look at Erik ten Hag. He had been at Ajax, one of the biggest clubs there is in world football. It didn't work out. He was fairly given the time. But then Manchester United got their decisions wrong. You cannot be considering sacking a manager and interview replacements and then conclude you're not parting ways with him. You're going to stay with him and invest in him after you've interviewed his potential replacements. That's what Man United did, openly out in the world. If they had done it secretly, maybe. You say Arteta has to deliver by winning a competition. Exactly. But for me, I've also, at the back of my mind, I have this about me that he could be the guy that builds you the project, but not the guy that maybe wins it for you. You could have that. You remember when Chelsea won the Champions League in 2012? Who won it for them? You remember who took them to the Champions League final in 2008? It was Abraham Grant. And in 2012, it was this guy, what's his name? I forget his name. The bald guy. After leaving Chelsea, he went to Aston Villa and had a stint, and things didn't work out, and then he went to Schalke 04. Di Matteo. Why? Because the project was ready. He just got things over the line. Today, if you bring a Jose Mourinho to Arsenal, if you bring an Antonio Conte to Arsenal, if you bring a Pep Guardiola to Arsenal, if you bring a Luis Enrique to Arsenal, you can almost guarantee that they are going to win you a piece of silverware. Whether you add in new players or not, Why? Because the project is ready, it's matured, it's at that stage where everybody expects them to win. They just need somebody that guides them over the line. You know? So yeah, Lodri is a star performer. Adash, that's true. He's a star performer. Um, Brilliant guy. So, anyways, back to the conversation about the weekend. So, Fulham against Aston Villa, very, very difficult game. Early kickoffs are always not easy. Aston Villa have been dominant in this sort of fixture. They've not lost to Fulham in the last five fixtures. They've won all of them quite convincingly. Then also they've been overall 35 meetings between them. Hi, Crystal. How are you doing? Crystal joins us from USA. I'm trying to remember the state. Oh, I'm forgetting. Let me see. Was it Massachusetts? Was it? So, how are you, Crystal? Good morning. Is it a good morning on your side? I think it's a good evening, most probably. Or most probably. So 35 meetings between the two sides, only 7 wins for Fulham and 17 for Aston Villa and 11 draws. That tells you how hard Fulham have found it to win this. Yes, how are you? I hope all is well. And yes, you're right, Massachusetts. Exactly. So good to have you back on the podcast. I'm doing well. Oh, it's 4 a.m. Oh, good morning. I know. From a couple of friends. I have a couple of friends in I think they're in California, somewhere there. And usually when they want to chat with you, it's night. And when you want to chat with them during day, it's night for them or early mornings. Okay, so bit of a difficult game between Fulham and Aston Villa. I'll go for a draw and the only reason for that is because it's an early kickoff. Afternoon fixtures, early kickoff. I don't know. They just have that odd vibe about them. They just become very, very difficult, and largely for big teams. Whereas, although I'll tilt towards an Aston Villa victory, given what their responsibilities are. Because if they win that one, they have an opportunity to go third as they wait for Man United to play a difficult Brentford on Monday night, and then, sort of more or less try to guarantee their finish within the top four. Milton says, I think the Champions League qualification is key for the top teams, but that requires strong squad if they do qualify. Yeah, that's the requirement. And for Chelsea, they lack that experience within that group of young players. They do not have enough quality in terms of they don't have enough quality, they do not have enough experience, enough leadership within that squad. And that's part of the reason as to why they're struggling, So you have young players with a young manager, sometimes can be a recipe for disaster. Okay, Liverpool versus Crystal Palace. Liverpool at home. Crystal Palace are going to be thinking about their Shakhtar Donetsk game in the semi-finals of the UEFA Conference League. I do not think their life in the Premier League is anywhere under threat at 43 points in 13th place. So I think they will be prioritizing that game against Shakhtar Donetsk in midweek. So, and whereas Crystal Palace have already beaten up against Liverpool twice this season in the EFL Cup by 3-1, in the league by 2-1. I do not think that they'll beat Liverpool, even though in the last 5 meetings, they have the lion's share of victories. They've beaten up against Liverpool on 2 different occasions. Liverpool has won it twice, and there's been 1 draw. So it's a bit evenly matched. But no less, Liverpool have the better hand or the upper hand in this one. First of all, it's a home fixture. Liverpool are out of all competitions and are simply playing to finish within the top 5. The task, not that the task should be easy, but for an opponent who they come up against and have their full thoughts on that game against Shakhtar Donetsk in the semi-finals of the UEFA Conference League because they want to go to the finals, I think that is enough to occupy their minds in partly to create a window for Liverpool to beat them. And so I'll go for Liverpool to win that one by 2-1. I mean, this is the time Flanvich should be giving us not a performance of a lifetime, but he should be showing us that he's now well adapted to the league and is capable of delivering the goods for this Liverpool side. So, I'll leave that at that. We'll be brief about it, but we've already discussed Anna Slot. So, and then West Ham versus Everton, another difficult game, bit of a 50-50. West Ham need to win to guarantee their safety in as far as this is concerned. Their last result was a goalless draw against Crystal Palace. There's been so many draws in this particular fixture, as many as 3 draws in the last 5. Only 1 win for West Ham and 1 win for Everton. Those wins, none of the wins has come when the other team is at home. So that tells you there's been as many as 16 draws in this tie out of 59 meetings. So as unfortunate as it sounds, I see West Ham destined for another draw. I'm going to go West Ham 1, Everton 1, even though West Ham have their life to fight for. Then Wolverhampton Wanderers versus Tottenham Hotspur, always a difficult fixture. The first leg ended in a 1-1 draw. Tottenham needed a late equalizer from Joao Paulinho, I think, to rescue a point in that one. Wolves is one of those sides that tend to trouble Tottenham so much. In fact, Wolves have beaten up against Tottenham Hotspur thrice in the last 5 meetings, and there's been 2 draws. So on 2 occasions, beating them by 2-1 and by 4-2. Tottenham Hotspur are away from home. Now, these 2 sides have met 23 times in the Premier League. Both sides have won the fixture 9 times, and there's been 5 draws. So you can see they are evenly matched. However, Roberto Di Zerbi, if you can't beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers, then you have no excuse. Then Tottenham have no reason to stay in the top flight, really. So I'm thinking, after last weekend's draw and a defeat in his debut game against Sunderland, this is bound to be the first victory that Roberto Di Zerbi registers by beating up against Wolverhampton Wanderers by 2-1. That's my prediction, for that particular fixture. Then quickly to move away from those is Arsenal versus Newcastle. Now, guys, we'll get to digest this game further we'll get to digest this particular game or do the whole preview in our night broadcast, the one that comes at 9 p.m. on Friday. So please wait for it. And Man United for Monday, we'll also discuss that on Monday. So let me not go into the in-depth of that. But in regards to the Arsenal, some exciting news coming through is that Bukayo Saka is set to return. Ricardo Carafiori could be back in action this weekend. They're going to need all their best players to see out the remaining 5 fixtures of the Premier League, but more importantly, to see where their exploits can take them in as far as the Champions League is concerned, because they're going to be playing in the semi-finals against a very, very difficult Atletico de Madrid side. Arsenal vs Newcastle looks good game indeed. Yeah, it does promise to be a good one. Arsenal will be nervous again because they have everything to lose. Newcastle do not have much to lose. Ed Howe's season has already been shambolic. It can't get any worse than it already is. I think they've lost thus far about 15 or 16 games in the Premier League this season, and question marks have been raised on on Newcastle. Somebody wrote an article asking whether he had outgrown the Newcastle project, and I said it is to the contrary. Maybe the Newcastle project has outgrown Ed Howe. So that's how I look at it. But it does promise to be a very, very entertaining fixture. In recent times, it's been quite the battle. There's been some battles, introduced in that one between the likes of Gabriel Magalhaes, Joelinton, Bruno Guimaraes, and things like that. It does get a bit feisty sometimes. So we'll get to discuss it in Friday night's broadcast, but allow me take you through to what else there is to come in the weekend in regards to all the other leagues. In the Spanish La Liga, Atletico de Madrid will be at home at 10 p.m. against Bilbao. The reason as to why I start with that game, even though it's the late kickoff, is because next week on Wednesday, they're going to be at home against Arsenal in the semi-finals of the UEFA Champions League. Then in the early kickoff, Deportivo Aves will take on Mallorca. Getafe will take on Barcelona. Valencia will take on Girona. Then in the German Bundesliga, Augsburg take on Eintracht Frankfurt. FC Cologne take on Bayer Leverkusen. Heidenheim take on St. Pauli. Mainz 05 take on Bayern Munich. Wolfsburg take on Borussia Dortmund. Hamburg SV take on Hoffenheim. Then in the Italian Serie A, we have Parma against Pisa. Bologna take on Roma. Hellas Verona take on Lecce, while in the French League One, Lyon will take on Auxerre. Angers will be up against Paris Saint-Germain. Looks like they're not having a game postponed or rescheduled ahead of their semi-final with Bayern Munich. Then Toulouse take on AC Monaco. Then in the FA Cup, we have a game between Manchester City and Southampton at Wembley Stadium. I expect Man City to win that game by 2-1. It will be difficult or prove to be difficult, but I think Man City will come out on top and advance to the finals of the FA Cup. Then on Super Sunday, that Man City game will kick off at a 7 p.m. That will be 15 minutes to the kickoff of the Arsenal-Newcastle game on Saturday. Then on Sunday, you have Vallecano take on Sociedad in the Spanish La Liga. Real Oviedo take on Elche. Osasuna will be up against Sevilla, while Villarreal will take on Celta Vigo. In the German Bundesliga, VfB Stuttgart will take on Werder Bremen. Borussia Dortmund will take on Freiburg, while in the Italian Serie A, Sassuolo will be away to Fiorentina in the early kickoff at 1:30 p.m. Genoa will take on Como. Torino will take on Inter. Como have had a bit of a stumble recently, while AC Milan will take on Juventus at 10:15 p.m. on Super Sunday. Should be an interesting fixture. In the French Ligue 1, Lorient take on Strasbourg. Le Havre take on Metz. Paris FC will be up against Lille. Stade Rennes will take on Nantes, while Olympique Marseille will take on Nice at 10:15 p.m. And then at 5 p.m. on Sunday, Chelsea. Apologies on the internet glitch, but yes, that was another internet glitch. We've had many of those, and I'm looking forward to wrapping up this one because at this rate, I don't know where it will end. Yes, FA Cup looks like Man City will go through. So Chelsea versus Leeds, I fancy Leeds to go through, by the way. Why? Even with the change of guard, maybe it will force a performance out of Chelsea. But I feel that they're so low on confidence going into that fixture as well. They're so low on confidence. You struggle to see how they bounce out of it so fast. They will need to. Suddenly, they will eventually have to. But Leeds can be a bit of a stubborn side. So I do fancy Leeds, and then we have a Manchester City versus Leeds final. Hopefully. But expect anything through that game. Guys, thank you so much for your patience, for your kindness, for your indulgence. Thank you so much for your feedback, your engagement. I mean, we've gone through literally hell in this podcast. First of all, we did the vast broadcast. Internet dropped for over 7 minutes, and then image quality was poor. The image was buffering. We had to put it to one end and restart it again, but you guys stayed with me. So thank you so much, Crystal. Thank you so much, Milton. Thank you so much, Rio Dandy. Thank you so much, Adash. Thank you so much, Chizzy, for having been part of this broadcast. And those of you that were part of the earlier broadcast that lasted for about what? For about 29 minutes, close on to 30. Thank you so much for all of you that have had to go through what I have gone through. As the streamer on this side, it's very, very frustrating, just as much as it is for you, the viewer, on that side. But thank you so much for being kind to stay along. Just so Fabrizio Romano's post, Maresca is favorite to become Manchester City manager if Pep leaves. Thank you, sir, and look forward to the games. That's Milton. So, Rio Dandy, briefly about Enzo Maresca. One of the reasons as to why Chelsea concluded that they part ways with Enzo Maresca is because he had told them that he had spoken to, as obligated in his contract, that he had received approaches from third-party representatives of Manchester City as a potential successor for Pep Guardiola. Now, What's been challenging about that situation, because for quite some time, Manchester City have been doing their due diligence or their background work, trying to find the potent replacement for Pep Guardiola, acknowledging that this could be his final season, despite him having an extra year left to his current contract. Now, two, in that search, they've identified Enzo Maresca. Mikel Arteta at one point was on their shortlist. I do not know whether he still is. Other than those two, not many names have been tossed around or floated around. I do not know if Cesc Fabregas has come into consideration or Julian Nagelsmann, but Roberto Di Zerbi was one of those that they equally thought about. So, unfortunately, nobody seems to be convinced beyond reasonable doubt of what Pep Guardiola's decision is going to be, either now or at the end of the season. So what you have is a situation where, first of all, Man City are not going to force Pep Guardiola out of the club. They respect him that much for what he's done. Two, if you're Enzo Maresca, are you just going to sit around waiting for that job, not knowing what is going to happen with Pep Guardiola? Because he still has a year left to his contract, which he's constantly said throughout the course of this season that he's going to see out. Then, as life is, you can never rule out or say never, you can never say never that he cannot renew his contract if he wishes to stay longer at Manchester City beyond the end of his current contract. We cannot rule that out. However, I have this feeling that if Pep Guardiola wins the Premier League title, which I believe he's going to do, having won already the Carabao Cup and has a chance at winning the FA Cup, if let's say he wins the treble, or even if he doesn't win the treble, the domestic treble, but also wins the Premier League, I think he will sign out. Why? Better off signing off on a high than betting yourself on what you could achieve next season. That's what I think that could happen. You say, I see Pep managing Spain one day. Okay. Wow. To replace Pep Guardiola is a difficult task. Indeed, it's a difficult task. There's no, I do not think you get it any easy when it comes to that. Those are very big shoes to fill. The same way Arne Slot is trying to fill the shoes of Jurgen Klopp. It's not been easy. The same way Arsenal brought Unai Emery to fill the shoes of Arsene Wenger, given how highly regarded he was at Arsenal, it's always going to be a difficult task, So, coming for any manager, walking in, unless you're Carlo Ancelotti, which not many aren't, unless you're Sir Alex Ferguson, unless you're a Jose Mourinho, unless you're who? Maybe a Hansi Flick. And even for Hansi Flick, he's not, I don't feel like he's lived the test of time. He's done well. He did well with Bayern Munich, tremendously well, including winning the treble in 2020. And what he did with the domestic treble with Barcelona last season. But unless you're in that sort of cohort of managers, trust me, it's going to be very, very difficult to fill the shoes of Pep Guardiola. Who is the most successful manager in your opinion? Most successful manager? When it comes to titles, I think you're going to go with Pep Guardiola. When it comes to legacy, I think Sir Alex Ferguson is right up there. So, in fact, even the likes of Johan Cruyff at Barcelona is going to be up there. Because, you see, football is more than just the success of trophies or what we see on the pitch. There's also things that happen off of the pitch. But for people like Johan Cruyff, he's oftentimes referred to as the father of modern day football because of introducing that fluid kind of football, the one that what you guys call the tic-tac. The likes of Pep Guardiola and so many others are simply taking a page out of Johan Cruyff's style and modifying it here and there. So you have legacy in that respect. So it depends on how you dice it. I'll give you an example. You'll have a manager like Arsene Wenger, whose trophy cabinet may not be as rich as that of Sir Alex Ferguson, but when it comes to legacy, they are in the same bracket. I don't say Wenger is above Sir Alex Ferguson, but they are in the same bracket. So it will depend on what criteria you're using to measure that. So, you say Liam chilling with 24 million. No. I don't think he's going to he's not going to get 24 million. Why? I read somewhere that he had an exit clause in his contract. Therefore, it means from what I've seen, he's going to get paid £4 million, not 24. 24 would have been the length of the remainder of his contract. But I think Chelsea, knowing that they've burnt their fingers before in regards to cutting and chopping managers, they have decided that they will be inserting exit clauses for their managers. Mosa Chaka says hi Mosa. So they had an exit clause in his contract, so they will not be paying the entirety of his contract. So multiple trusted sources suggest he's going to be paid £4 million. Okay. Pep managing Spain one day, that's highly likely. But for me, I still want him in club football. I still want to see him in club football. I would love for him to go to Italy, even if it were to be for 3 years. Why? Because of the sort of place that Italian football is in at the moment. I do not know if he went to Italian football, what club it would be, whether Juventus and Inter Milan and AC Milan and Napoli or Lazio. I don't think it's going to be a Lazio or an AC Roma, which I don't think is going to be. If the chance came, I think it would either have to be an AC Milan, an Inter Milan, or a Juventus, one of those three. But I would love to see him there. Oh, it's Mosa. Mosa. Okay, thank you for the correction. So, that's what I would love to see Pep Guardiola do. First of all, him going to Italian football would have a lot of focus on Italian football, because a lot of the footballing world would likes to follow Pep Guardiola and see what he does, given his pedigree in the game, but more so for what it would mean for Italian football as a whole, given the kind of place that it is in right now. So that's what I would see. Okay. Definitely, Pep has achieved a lot, though maybe UEFA Champions League has been the most difficult. Yeah, people say that because he did not win it with Bayern Munich between 2013 and 2016. All he did was semi-finals, all through and through. But he's won 3 of them, 2 with Barcelona and 1 with Manchester City. Jose Mourinho won it with FC Porto, did 1 with Inter Milan. Isn't that just about it? He doesn't have any other Champions League, so he has 2. Sir Alex Ferguson had what? 2 with Man United? I think 99 and 2008. So I don't think, when you look at maybe Carlo Ancelotti has more, 3 with Real Madrid, AC Milan 2, So yeah, basically, you said, did you see Trump offering Italy to the World Cup? I've read that news of he offering Italy to be at the World Cup at the expense of Iran, but it doesn't just work that way. You do not just stand up and say that let's have so and so coming. Not really. Not really. So they ought to do better than that. So anyways, Italy are not at the World Cup because they did not qualify. They do not deserve to be there. So anyways, guys, allow me to say goodbye. It's been a pleasure doing this with you. I would have loved to continue, but unfortunately, I have to run and get some things done as soon as possible for now. So have yourselves a blessed day, and let's catch up again later tonight at 9 p.m. East African time. Bye-bye for now. Stay blessed.